They weren't supposed to go after all these other countries in the Middle East. Nobody expected that. We were shocked.
Are you surprised that nobody briefed you ahead of time that might be their retaliation?
No. The greatest experts, nobody thought they were going to hit.
In testimony today, President Donald Trump's top intelligence officials seem to contradict his claim that nobody expected Iran to go after U.S. allies in the region.
The president says nobody knew, and my question is, did you tell him?
What I can tell you is that Iran had specific plans to hit U.S. interests in energy sites across the region, and that's why the Department of War and the Department of State took measures for force protection and personnel protection in advance of Operation Epic Fury. I think that's what's most important.
CNN reported that the Trump administration underestimated Iran's willingness to close the Strait of Hormuz. Senators asked top intelligence officials if the president was briefed on that likely outcome.
Did you brief the president if he starts a war of choice that the likely result would be that Iran would strike adjacent Gulf nations and close the Strait of Hormuz? Did you brief him on those two facts that I think have been consistently the assumptions of the intelligence community?
I have not and won't divulge internal conversations. I will say that those of us within the intelligence community continue to provide the president with all of the best objective intelligence available to inform his decisions.
Mystery solved. So many of us were wondering, why would the United States go into Iran without talking with any of their allies first? Well, today Donald Trump told the world why he didn't talk to any allies ahead of time. And instead of me showing you him saying that, I'm going to show you the Japanese prime minister who was sitting beside him at the time, listening to him say that.
And we didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay? Right?
So on February 28th, that man took action that is going to lead to an affordability crisis. Absolutely everything. Everything is going to be more expensive for everybody. And now he's trying to figure out a way to unfuck it up. And every time, in my opinion, every time he opens his mouth, he makes it worse, not better. Tell me if you disagree.
I think what we're witnessing here is the most monumental strategic stupidity exhibited by any president in our lifetime. I mean, utterly outrageous that he is at one time begging people to come help him with the mess that he created, causing the worst oil shock we have seen in our lifetime, begging people to help. And then when they're not racing to help him, after he's already unleashed chaotic tariffs on them, after he's already insulted them before, demeaned and degraded them, didn't go America first, went America alone, and really undermined all of our alliances. Now he's even going further. This is a president that says, I don't need your help, please help me. I don't need your help, please help me. All the while we're seeing this whole world really feeling the shocks of this war, all for Donald Trump's folly in his going to war, in a war that does not have an end game, especially not one without American troops, which he won't pull off the table. That is what's crazy about this man right now, is that he's out of control. But what is worse, the strategic blunder after blunder that he's making, or Republicans in the United States Senate who watch him and don't even call his administration in for hearings? No checks, no balances, no accountability. This is outrageous, and it has to stop.
Getting here to the White House, where there's still major questions about something the president said yesterday. President Trump said that he spoke to a former president about Iran.
No, I've spoken to a certain president, who I like, actually, a past president, former president. He said, I wish I did it. I wish I did, but they didn't do it.
So the president said it was not former President George W. Bush. And so we reached out to all the living former presidents, and all of their aides and offices told us that none of them have spoken to President Trump about this topic. Not former President Bill Clinton, not former President Barack Obama, and not former President Joe Biden either.
They weren't supposed to go after all these other countries in the Middle East. Those missiles were set to go after them. So they hit Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait. Nobody expected that. We were shocked.
What is there to say? What is there to say? What is there to do? If there's one thing that you can always bet on, it's whatever comes out of Donald Trump's mouth is at the detriment to the United States of America and all of her interests. That wasn't even in his best interest. This is so crazy that this is who we have at the helm. And this is not speaking to the honor or legitimacy of the conflict in which he is referring to. I'm just saying, if I worked for any of the acronyms or the military, right. The head of the counterterrorism task force just resigned, so.
In an absolutely shocking turn of events that nobody could have possibly seen coming, a war in Southwest Asia is affecting the price of oil. Iran knows this and is using it to great effect to economically pressure the world into forcing an end to the war by closing the Strait of Hormuz to any nations affiliated with the US or Israel. About 20% of the world's oil and natural gas supply passes through the strait, and almost none of that is getting through right now. Even worse, at least from the viewpoint of U.S. strategic goals, is that this disruption is not affecting Iran and its allies as much as it should. Russia, which is a key ally of Iran, is directly benefiting from the war as its own oil supply becomes more critical to China and Europe as a result of the shortage of oil traveling through the strait. Furthermore, the Trump administration, which is widely believed to have been compromised by Russia, has used the rising oil prices as an excuse to ease sanctions placed on Russian oil as a result of Russia's continuing war in Ukraine. So Trump has basically handed Russia huge financial relief at a time when they are actively threatening European stability and literally supplying Iran with weapons to fight us with. China, meanwhile, is also able to weather the supply shock better than most, as 1, its tankers are still being allowed through the strait, and 2, a combination of recent supply diversification, a lower reliance on oil than other countries, and large strategic reserves simply make it less vulnerable to such shocks in the first place. Finally, even Iran itself is not doing as poorly as it should be from closing the strait, as the US is apparently allowing Iranian tankers out of the strait to supply the rest of the world. So it's still moving about 1.5 million barrels per day, mainly to China, and while that's certainly lower than its February numbers of 2.1 million barrels, it's hardly catastrophic. Meanwhile, the rest of the world is suffering from steadily increasing oil prices, which are up just about 53% from the start of the war, and are not going to stop increasing anytime soon. Oil is an inelastic commodity, which means that its changes in demand are very slow to respond to changes in price, and as a result, we can expect prices to keep slowly increasing until either the supply disruption ends or until the drop in demand eventually equalizes with the 20% drop in supply. And you only have to think about how expensive gas has to get before 20% of people stop buying it to get to work every morning to see the problem with that. The economics are complicated, and I'm hardly an expert, but from what I can find, we can expect a 2 to 5 times increase in the price of oil before the demand evens out, based on current supply shortages. Which is great for the oil barons in the United States that are in Trump's pocket, but not so great for the average American. Naturally, the Trump administration did absolutely nothing to prepare for this incredibly obvious turn of events, and they are now scrambling in panic as they realize that they can't meet their earlier promise to protect ships traveling through the strait. They have now turned to our allies, who they have also spent the last year insulting, threatening, and isolating to help police the strait, and all of these have rightly refused to get involved in the war. Trump is reportedly seething, which is not surprising considering that he doesn't understand the word no and also has never faced very many consequences for his actions. And considering that literally the only thing MAGA seems to care about lately is the price of gas, we are in for some big consequences indeed.
The only reason why people are not in favor of the war against Iran is because Trump is leading the force behind it. The reason why they're against the war against Iran now, these Democrats, these moronic Democrats who used to be in favor of it decades ago, only one very simple answer. It's because Trump is doing it. If Obama did it then, when he was president, Obama would have been elected and nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. Iran is the biggest terror sponsor in the world, which means Iran pretends to be this great country and, cultural and all that shit, but they're like an octopus, right? They have the head in the center, which is Iran, and they have tentacles coming out all over the world. Hamas, Hezbollah, Al-Qaeda, all these terrorist organizations are being funded by Iran. And I think what Trump is doing is necessary. I think it's super necessary that we do what we're doing now, get rid of Iran. Trump has the balls with Israel to do it. And if people are honest with themselves, they know that Iran was always a problem and we're finally dealing with them. So those Democrats who are against it now were not against it 10 years ago. It's what we call Trump derangement syndrome on steroids.
In an angry tweet, Donald Trump now says he doesn't need Europe's help fighting in Iran. The war is over anyway. We already won. And he was just begging this morning and last night for Europe's help. So is the war over? Have we won? Do we need their help? Don't we need their help? Guys, this is a mess. This is really incredibly concerning about what's happening with the war. Because why did it get to the point where yesterday Trump, almost in a panic, was begging the Europeans to join, hinted that he was going to withdraw from NATO if the Europeans didn't help, when just a week ago he sent the British ships home. Britain was going to send some ships, and he said, "You're too late. We don't need you. We've already won. Their military is obliterated." Then yesterday he begged for Europe to send ships and troops. Not clear why, by the way. As one European leader said, I think it was the German Defense Minister Pistorius, said, "Why does America need our help? We can send a little frigate? The U.S. Navy, the glorious U.S. Navy needs our help?" Good question. Why do we need their help? Why didn't he prepare for this? Trump claimed yesterday that no one could have expected Iran would have attacked the neighbors and shut down the Strait of Hormuz. We now find out from Reuters today, 3 of Trump's aides say he was briefed on it multiple times. He knew, guys, he got us into this mess, and now he's just flailing. This is very scary when we've got troops on the ground, billions of dollars we've spent, and a war that's growing, and our president doesn't know what he's doing.
According to new reports, all of the smart people, all of the military generals had given Donald Trump warning before he even fired the first missile into a school over in Iran that if you attack them, the chair of the Joint Chiefs said if you attack them, they're probably going to end up closing down the Strait of Hormuz. And if they can't close it down completely, then they're going to attack it with missiles, with bullets, with drones, and with mines. And according to the report, Trump acknowledged the risk, according to people familiar with the internal discussions, but proceeded anyway with what the journal described as the most consequential foreign policy decision of his 2 presidencies. He told his team that Tehran would likely capitulate before closing the strait, and even if Iran tried, the U.S. military could handle it. So, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, other high-ranking military officials were like, hey, these are all the things that are going to happen, which basically was their way of saying, this is why we've never done something this effing stupid, by the way. It's going to cripple the global economy, man. Like, we can't do that just because we don't want them to have the same toy that we have thousands of. Because that's what this is about. And Trump was like, what are they going to do? They're not going to close it. We got the strongest military in the world. They'll give in to me before they close the Strait of Hormuz. So thank you very much, people with actual intelligence, but I think I know a little bit better than you. And he did it anyway. And now, oopsie-doo, all the bad things that everybody said would happen are happening. In fact, the military leaders are also telling Donald Trump right now that we cannot use U.S. military vessels in the Strait of Hormuz to protect oil tankers. Because what that does is that makes us sitting ducks. If we do that, if we put our soldiers out there, if we do these troops out here, they're targets. They will be attacked. They will be killed. So no, we cannot. Now, if Trump orders them to, it is what it is, but they're telling him, like, we can't do this at all. And so far, it's holding. But also at the same time, with the Strait of Hormuz effectively closed, oil analysts came out just a couple days ago and revised their already dire predictions. They are now predicting that the price of oil could hit $200 per barrel. In doing so, we could end up seeing the largest increase in the price of gasoline on the planet in the shortest amount of time we have ever seen. This has the potential, again, this is coming from analysts in the oil industry.
I often find myself wondering if the cultists are ever going to realize that Donald Trump has no plan. The U.S. counterterrorism director Joe Kent resigned from the Trump administration, claiming that Iran posed no imminent threat. He said he can't in good conscience continue supporting the ongoing war. Even though he's a far-right conspiracy theorist, he accused Trump of being deceived by Netanyahu. Marco Rubio even stated 2 weeks ago publicly that the reason we attacked Iran is because Netanyahu did. Honestly, we got drawn into a war that Netanyahu wanted for decades, and now we are left holding the bag. And after a recent 2-hour closed-door meeting with military officials on the subject, the senators left that meeting absolutely incensed because they said Donald Trump has no clue what he's doing and he has no exit strategy. He has no actual long-term plan here. As usual, the man who bankrupted multiple casinos now has no clue how to get out of the situation he created. But it gets even worse than that because Iran recently released their set of demands. They really don't care. They're laughing their asses off right now. The Strait of Hormuz is closed down right now and littered with mines, which is affecting over a sixth of the world's oil production. Iran knows they are the ones holding all the cards, because they can sit there protected by mountains and get bombarded forever while the cost of gas continues to go up and wrecks the global economy. And their demands, given in 30-day increments, are for all troops to be pulled out of Iran and their neighboring countries, for the United States to lift all sanctions on Iran going back to the 1970s, and for hundreds of billions of dollars to be paid in reparations to Iran. If these demands are not met, they say they will permanently close down the Strait of Hormuz, and they also said that Russia and China are completely behind them and have given them unlimited military capability, including nuclear capability to retaliate and deploy if necessary. To which Russia and China immediately confirmed those statements after Iran made those demands. So even though Iran had absolutely no nuclear capability up to this point, and even if you thought they did, Donald Trump supposedly destroyed all of it, right? But now they're saying, give us what we want in hundreds of billions of dollars and completely pull all of your troops out, or they will completely destroy the global oil economy and use weapons, potentially nuclear ones, provided by China and Russia against their enemies. Because he's the poster boy for the Dunning-Kruger effect, Donald Trump once again thought he was the smartest person in the room and he was going to win this conflict in a week and everybody was going to love him. Instead, he's pushed away every single one of our allies who now refuse to help him. Iran is demanding hundreds of billions of dollars and repealing of sanctions going back half a century. And they're threatening to use nuclear capabilities on us that they did not have before this conflict started, but are now being given to them by other countries. And all of this as Donald Trump and his cultists continue to call themselves patriots and claim they are for America first. This is why they all deserve to be neutered.
So guys, the war in Iran is still continuing back to back. I mean, it wasn't expected like it will be like this. I can honestly tell you, even the president himself came out and said that, we were not expecting that Iran would retaliate. And now it's over 2 weeks. And as of today, 19th March 2025, I actually saw clips and news. Okay, this is a digital world. So we get information like at the moment, like just at that moment that it has been broken. So guys, the U.S. Embassy in Middle East has told every American, you need to move out of Middle East, especially Saudi Arabia. So we'll still do more research, guys, so that you may get to understand what's really happening, like the truth. We care so much about passing truthful information rather than just gossips. But here, we deal more about reaction videos. And guys, so that's the latest news. And after the president came and announced that as an administration and as a government, they weren't expecting that Iran will retaliate, I can tell you, Americans came out in large numbers and they aired out their opinion. And of course, they weren't happy. Like, are you for real? You are shocked. How? Because actually this was one comment that I saw. The guy was like, my friend is in the military, and mid last year in 2025, he knew that in January 2026 he will be in Middle East, and that is in Dubai. So him coming out and saying that is kind of shocked, like he did not expect that. It's actually making people wonder, like, for real? Do you want to tell me that you have intelligence, an intelligence that is not functioning and working? Because by the time you get into a war, you must have planned very well. You must have known, what are the possible outcomes of the war once we start this. and also come up with a backup plan and a continuity plan, just like how an organization works. So at the moment, the war, the conflict has turned into a real conflict, not just tensions. And the situation currently is being described as that of part of this war. And of course, we all know Iran-US war. You cannot fail to mention Israel. This war, as we always see here, it just started with an airstrike. Nothing else, and that is how it has been escalating. So, my good people, Americans are speaking loudly and clearly. And that is they're saying that, we all listen to these clips, and they're saying that he's actually lying. How now? You knew everything that was happening. And they believe that he's not telling the truth. So, who is benefiting from the war now? Iran-US-Israel war. It's the Russia. The Russians are benefiting now. I guess even the price of oil has already gone down in their countries. However, it has really gone up in other places of the world. And if you talk about Americans themselves, oh my God. For them, I think it was just like in the first few days of the war and everything had gone up, and they were complaining that, oh man, this is very unfair because our salaries are stagnant, but the economy, the life there is just going up, and we didn't want this war. It's our president who started it. So there is a clip that we just played here whereby the president of America claimed that he talked to one of the former presidents in America. And the president was like regretting and telling him that I wish I was the one who had done that. And I sat down and thought about this issue. Like, you mean there is a former president that actually had the ambition and was really yearning to do what the president of America is doing now? Will that be true? And then I found a clip of a reporter that did a research on that particular issue and reached out to all the surviving presidents, former presidents of America, every one of them, if not them, their offices. And you know what? It's shocking. All of them said that they have not yet talked to the president of America. Oh man. What's happening here? What is happening? Hey, you mean, actually, it's believed that Iran is one of those countries that act like a chameleon. They pretend to be so good, they pretend to be democratic, but they instigate and fuel conflicts around the world by supporting these groups that put people in a very bad situations, like this, we all know them, and even one of the content creators mentioned it in our clips. I don't know what you have to say about that, but so many people have actually agreed with him that yeah, it's true, very true. Iran is not a good country. And one of them was even saying that Democrats at the moment, they are actually supporting the fight against Trump, the fight against Iran. And that is because Iran is not a nice place or country that has been, the way it has been put outside here. So Iran is actually fighting back. And it has launched a lot of drone attacks and missile attacks on Bahrain and Kuwait and so many other Middle East countries. So, in week 4, I can tell you, there's been major escalations. Major escalations. But who are we to say anyway? because at the moment, most of us expected that, the conflict will calm down, but it's not. Anyway, guys, I don't know what you think about the video. I'll see you in the next one. And I don't know what you think even about the president coming out and saying that, we are going to drop out of NATO because, he's not seeing any European country supporting them. Initially, he had told them that we don't really need you, we are okay, we already won the war. And then after some few days, you hear him saying that we need support, and if you don't support us, we will actually drop out of NATO. And I think maybe they're the most contributors, okay, financial contributors of the NATO or what, I don't know. Bye bye.